Hello, everyone, and welcome to this special event in the Seekers Forum. I'm thrilled that you could join us, and I'm very pleased to be welcoming Pali Summerlin to our forum today. In this month's program, we're looking at shadows of the heart and healing the wounds that bind us. And when I was thinking of who I wanted to invite to address this question with us, the first person who came to mind is Pali Summerlin. When ideas are in the air, in the last 3 or 4 months, I've had 5 different people tell me that I needed to speak to Pali Summerlin, and I have seen the profound effect that Pali's work is having on people's lives. So I'm just completely delighted that Pali could join us this morning or this afternoon, depending where you are, from Maui. How are you, Pali?
Really well, Mark. Thank you so much. Yeah, it's great to be with you.
I'm so glad you could join us. So, as I was just saying, we're talking about shadows of the heart and healing the wounds that bind us. And I was really intrigued by something that you said in an interview that I'd like to talk about for starters. You talked about there being an inversion between cause and effect in how we understand our own wounding. An inversion of what we generally think to be the cause and effect. Could you say more about that, please?
Well, that's the radical understanding of oneself as cause in the matter of whatever shows up in your world. In the most specific way, it points to quantum physics and the double slit experiment, the way that we see reality gives us the experience of that. And in the model that I use, I call it a kindergarten model because I'm not a scientist or even a philosopher. I'm not even a psychologist, but in the way that how we see is determined by our early wounding. And so that lens that we see through, that it's a perceptual reality, and the lens that we see through is distorted by our wounding. And then so we don't see the world as it is, we see the world as we are, right?
Right, right. So, in other words, we are the cause. We're not, our suffering isn't being caused by what's happening outside of us.
Now, the way that we experience it is our first, we can determine that, but at some point we begin using. We use a technology in the groups here on Maui called the 6 Steps to Freedom process, which correlates your early wounding with the distortion lens that you perceive reality through, and so it's very deep and close in, very personal work. And the underpinning premise is exactly that. It's that quote from Anna Isnen is, "We don't see the world as it is, we see the world as we are," points to how this works. In New Age circles for decades, we've been banding around the concept you create your own reality, right?
Right.
As me's, as what I call ego or the me self, I'm like, oh my God, how did I create this mess? Yeah. But the reality is it's not from the ego perspective that we can determine what our external reality will be. It's from that lens of distortion that was created by our wounded conclusion about ourself. Early on, the "I'm not good enough" or "I don't matter" gets installed, and then we're seeing everything through that prism. Um,
And so, if I'm in a situation where I'm experiencing I'm not enough and I'm thinking it's coming from outside of me,
right?
what step do I take? What's the initial kindergarten step that I take to begin to undo that myth?
Right. Well, the first step in this 6 Steps to Freedom process is to acknowledge that I'm triggered, right? I'm upset. Yeah. The second step is the pointer to turn it around towards oneself, and it's about me. I'm triggered, it's about me. And then to experience as fully as one can the feelings that have come up in that triggered experience.
Mm-hmm.
Then we use those feelings to evoke the earliest memory that occurs to us when we felt the same way. Typically, that'll bring back some memory of some interaction with a caretaker or a parent or a sibling. It'll typically take us back into an early experience of that, the same feelings that occurred in this instance when we're triggered. And then we use those feelings to experience, move into the experience of that early memory to see when that happened, what did I conclude that it meant about me? Yeah. And so that's what, with that information, with that revelation, we see what created the distortion lens that we're seeing the world through, and why that trigger, which is probably comes up often, like I'm not good enough or I don't matter. But in the triggered experience, it'll be that somebody disses us some way, right?
Right, right,
So we
right.
use that triggered experience to find out that early experience that was imprinting that created what I call the distortion lens. Actually, I believe that when we experience those early, maybe a parental rejection, or we experienced it that way, I sometimes use the kind of innocuous idea that your mom was late picking you up from kindergarten, the first day of kindergarten, and all of a sudden you felt abandoned, you felt alone, right? And so as we get in touch with that and see that that's what how we've been seeing reality from that early time, then we realize that exactly what the premise is, that the way I'm interpreting what they're saying or doing is through the distortion lens of I don't matter. The
And do
sixth
those,
step in this
go ahead,
process,
please.
yeah, Mark, the sixth step in this process is the power of the the light of awareness shining on this early conclusion and seeing that that was unavoidable but never true. I call it the process of forgiveness. It's the revealing, the revelation of what's actually happening, right? And that is that I am perceiving something in a distorted way. That's what actually is going on. My experience is that I'm being dissed one more time. They didn't call me back. I wasn't included. But with this light of our true nature, which is awake awareness, awareness is fundamental to this reality. This is a perceptual reality. And so with the forgiveness, the light of awareness, I forgive myself for ever having believed I don't matter. So it's like a homecoming. We're coming back to ourselves. And from that place, we're present in our world in a different way than when everything looked like it was against us. Make sense to you? Yeah.
Makes perfect sense to me. Can you say something more about forgiveness? Speaking of triggers, that's a
Yeah,
major
I know.
trigger for a lot of folks. What do you mean when you refer to forgiveness?
Well, because this is all of this is our creation, right? Then the one we're forgiving is ourselves. We're forgiving ourselves for the misperception, which was unavoidable but never true. Makes sense. Yeah, yeah. So it's like in the way that I see it, it's like awareness shining after you've been through this process of re-experiencing the early wounding and the conclusion you made, which created the distortion lens. When you get to the sixth step and you're shining the bright light of awareness, it's like shining sunlight on mold, and you're shining the light of awareness on that early conclusion, which was, again, unavoidable for that little 2-year-old, 3-year-old, right? But never true. So it has that kind of energetic, perceptual, profound dispelling. And we may, and often we do, because we've had many incarnations into this 3D reality based in polarity and fear. That points directly to the Garden of Eden, right?
Right, right,
right
right.
and wrong, good and bad, right? And the fear base that we disobeyed, yeah. And so we're caught in that dilemma also, and it partakes of why, upon incarnation, I suspect that we wouldn't reincarnate here in this 3D reality if we didn't still carry the frequency of polarity and fear, and also the determination, perhaps a soul determination. I'm just, who knows if this is just a pointer, a soul determination to come home to the garden, to come home to our own hearts on our own behalf. And in that is the salvation, that is the awakened state. When that occurs, the me that gets created by I'm not good enough, I don't matter, simply falls away. There's a book whose title I love by Anand Tupten, a Rinpoche in Northern California, and the title is No Self, No Problem, right?
Right,
Yeah.
right,
So we're looking to dispel, to disintegrate, to dissolve the attachment and the identification with I'm not good enough, I don't matter. That's what creates a self. That's what creates a me that needs to get something or avoid something to be okay.
right. Now you talk about dispelling, Polly. I wonder, are our triggers ever completely dispelled, or is it just our relationship to them that shifts?
Well, what happened for this body mind unit in 2010 was that I saw through what was the the compelling error of my belief. I call it the error of codependency, the belief that somebody else's well-being depends on me. And I had a lifetime of that. I was 70 at that point. I'd had a lifetime of all of my attention and all of my endeavors were on behalf of these other two very close in family members, right? What happened was that the way that we often have a wake up call, even or awakening call, is when something is so disturbing, or like we often say, you have to go all the way through to come out the other side. But the other thing is that it has to be to, very close to catastrophic to get your attention. And I had done the school for the work with Byron Katie years before that, and I heard Katie's voice in my mind saying, "If you're suffering, you're believing something that's not true." And with that, I something shifted. The me fell away, actually. So it was a spontaneous, what we would call an awakening, but all that it is, and it's not to minimize the impact because the impact is amazing. It clears up everything. You come to the sense of yourself as one with reality and with others. All judgment being self-judgment, that falls away. But the answer to your question, Mark, is that we are here to clear out everything that is fear-based and attaches us, which is going to be some distortion lens about ourselves. So the truth is here, and since 2010, I've not been triggered.
Extraordinary. Have you ever seen that happen with anyone you've worked with?
Well, it seems to happen in degrees, and people get freer and freer. I th I have an idea that once they're a certain level of freedom, I don't see them anymore, right? No,
You wouldn't know.
I wouldn't know. No, I do feel that, and there are these openings into more freedom, more peace, everything that we say we value, right?
Mm,
So
mm.
that happens a lot, and it's I believe that this is also a collective uh, event. This is the collective consciousness on this planet is undergoing this particular shift. I believe that, and I think it shows up. It's forecast like what we would call a morphogenetic field that's pointed to in the book of Revelation as 144,000, right? What we all were privy to early in the New Age movement as the 100th monkey. But it points to a morphogenetic field of, because we are all one. And then what's going on is that every single thing that happens is impacting the whole. And that's what I believe we are all here to do together, uh, is to create a higher frequency reality. And but when that happens for you, it's done in your experience.
Yes, yes. Now, let me ask you a question that is frequently asked of Katie. And just to keep it straight, when someone is abusing you, you're not saying they're not abusing you.
No, not at all. They are.
They are abusing you. And we have in some way manifested that through our perception or our behavior.
Well, what we've in our Sangha here recently, we've been engaged with a book by Paul Levy called The Quantum Revelation. And what that's pointing to, the synopsis of that is in this little quip, as viewed, so appears. When we believe there's something wrong with me, I'm not good enough, we're seeing through that distortion lens. That's the information into the quantum field that materializes as a 3D reality that reflects that distortion. It's not to self-blame, it's to reperceive, is the goal. No, shit really happens for sure, right? Yeah.
Right.
And how we are with it, if we see it, not to blame ourselves, but to understand that I'm believing that there's something wrong with me or I'm not good enough, and then the world as viewed, there's something wrong with me, so appears, my conditions, my experiences show up as there's something wrong with me, right? So there's a way in which when I work with people who say, well, I want more money or I want a better relationship, I always say, you first. You do it where you are with yourself, and then your world reflects it.
Gotcha. Let me just drill down a little deeper into this around random acts of violence, because we live in a time of so much violence.
Right.
And I want to give people a framework to hold what's going on in a way that is comprehensible for them. So if something random happens to you, are you saying that that is caused by the way something, a belief or a field that one has produced in some way through one's thinking or perception? Or is there such a thing as a random act of violence? I guess that's my question.
I don't believe there's anything random going on. But I do understand and have experienced here participation in what looks like an external reality apart from me that I have to interact in. And it might be through a partner, it might be through a lack or an abundance of money, it might be many ways, but there isn't anything random going on.
Okay.
It's not about it, it's really important not to blame ourselves, but to understand how we are perceiving reality. That is the information we're offering into the quantum field, into the very essence of what reality is, that then appears as a 3D reality. This goes directly to the double slit experiment. When the scientist began to measure the light wave, it collapsed into a photon. When we perceive something as material, it shows up that way, right? And so this is close in work, not to self-blame, but to understand so that we can make a shift. It's always you first. You want a relationship, you have one with yourself that portends or partakes of exactly what you want. And then it will show up in the external. Or you will be informed of a higher priority of your own.
I hope you're enjoying this conversation from the Seekers Forum. If you'd like to hear the rest of this interview and learn more about our robust collection of talks, videos, and guided writing sessions, please join us at theseekersforum.com and sign up for our free 30-day trial membership. I hope to see you there. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.